History is one of the greatest signs of Allah in creation. Allah is the Lord of history. Allah is the creator of history. He is Maliku Yawm deen. He is the owner and the possessor of the Day of Judgment. And the Day of Judgment when all human beings who ever lived and all of the spirits who were ever created, they will all be brought together on this earth. This earth will be transformed utterly, and it will be one huge continent. No islands, no peninsulas, one huge continent surrounded by one sea, and that sea will be fire. And all human beings who ever lived will be brought back to life, and all the spirits, and God will send down his angels in ranks, and they will gather the people to the places where each of them is meant to go for the judgment. And the awaiting of the judgment is the greatest tribulation that you and I will ever face. May we live and die as believers, and may we be safe in the next world. If we live this life in a way that jeopardizes the hereafter, then we have made a very bad bargain. What counts in this life is to live as a good, believing human being and to be safe in the next life. That is what counts, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us that. But one of the things we see on the Day of Judgment, of course, the Day of Judgment takes a long time to get started, because when all of these people who are gathered together from thousands of generations that we don't even know about, including the generations of the spirits who were before us, they lived in this world before we did. They had kingdoms here. They had history here. Before that is done, the whole world is engulfed in the wrath of God, the ghadab. God's wrath is now manifested, that now all of this history that began thousands of years ago, it has come to an end. And what did we do that was good? Of course, there are people who are believers. There were the messengers and the prophets. There were those who followed them. There were those who struggled to live their way. And these people are the reason for creation. And of course, the Day of Judgment will be the great crowning of their glory. But in the beginning, you don't see that. They are all under the banner of praise, Liwa'ul Hamd, which is a huge banner that can be seen from thousands of miles away. And it is green, and it extends to the east, and it extends to the west, and it extends also to the south. It is huge, and the earth is flat. There are no mountains, there are no valleys, there are no rivers. Okay, and there under the banner of praise will be the beloved of the beloved, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Jesus, the son of Mary, and Moses, the son of Imran, and there will be there Noah and Abraham and Adam and all the prophets. Okay, these are true beliefs. And then the believers will be with them. But the believers also are in a state of great anxiety, waiting for judgment. Because who will I really turn out to be? And what of my actions were really accepted? So there's no more difficult time than we face than the time of awaiting for judgment. And therefore, one of the greatest mercies of God to creation is the great intercession of the Prophet, which in hadith is referred to as ash-shafa'atul kubra, the major intercession, which is established not only by authentic hadith, but hadith which some scholars would say are mutawatira. They are so abundantly narrated that they are beyond doubt. And then, as we know in the hadith of intercession, that the Prophet will then make these beautiful prayers. He will bow and prostrate himself to Allah, and he will ask God to begin the judgment. That's what that does. And then after waiting and waiting, and for the disbeliever the waiting is like 50,000 years, then it begins, and that is the first mercy, and that is the first relief. Even for people who are really horrible, and they know they are horrible, and they know that they will go to the fire, they are relieved that I will now be judged. I will now be given what I deserve. I will now be placed in the place where I deserve to go. And so they are relieved. Even if they are damned and they go into the fire, they are relieved to do that. The Prophet tells us the story of two men who were believers, and they were very disobedient. They were disbelievers, and they are condemned to the fire. And on the day of judgment, they are even told, you did these things, you did these things, you were forgiven, and you did it again. And then they're going to the fire. The angels are driving them to the fire, and they have their heads down, and then one of them looks back at the place of judgment as if like he's in this state of confusion. And then the angels ask about that. And he says, I am worse than God has declared me to be. I deserve worse than has been given to me. I'm 100 times worse than that. I'm 1,000 times worse than that. But in my heart, I knew Allah's mercy. And in my heart, I had expectations of His mercy. And I hoped that I might be forgiven. And then Allah makes him the first one to be released from the fire, because He will release all believers from the fire. That because you had that hope in your heart, and because you never let it die, even now, come back, go to the garden, be forgiven. So these are true things. But one of the most important things about the Day of Judgment is that it is the replay of human history. What really happened here? Who really said what? Who really did what? What was the nature of these battles and these wars and these murders and these conspiracies and all these things that happened? Because on the Day of Judgment, that will be clear for all humanity to see. And this is why the Day of Judgment is also the greatest testimony to Allah's glory. Subhanallah. That Allah does no injustice in creation. Nothing that He does is in vain. Nothing that He does is meaningless or mistaken. Even if it is the suffering of people for 1,000 years. You will see on the Day of Judgment that all of this had wisdom in it. And on that day, everything will be redressed. Everything will be redressed. And the people who cried and cried, they will now laugh, and they will be happy.